Independence, self-reliance, and individuality are all things society tells us we need in order to win security and comfort in life. As we mature and become more individual, it's easier for us to make our indelible mark on society. Humans crave society and need community in order to feel secure enough to express ourselves. Sometimes we are lucky enough to find this within family and friends, and sometimes we need to seek out support from others. We are given so many milestones in life that challenge us to find our place in a world that needs our input. But independence, self-reliance, and individuality are dependent on the support and influence around us, whether it's positive or negative. This year has become a great exercise in how we respond to adversity and the essential input of community in order to move forward and overcome. Troupe 6789 show Echo employed students writing about influence and its effects on the self. A completely student-devised work, Echo explores how we find our independence and individuality with the help of those around us. Troupe 6789 is proud to present the show Echo, written by Zachariah King, Snider, Siddalee Malone, Macie Shepherd, Kamryn Newman, Nicholas Bates, and Jenava Harris. Time is the coin of your life. It is the only coin you have, and only you can determine how that will be spent. Be careful, lest you let others spend it for you. Carl Sandburg's words stick with me every day here recently. As I'm nearing the end of one chapter in the Book of Life, I find myself teetering on the edge of excitement. What comes next? Who comes next? Where will I be in a year from now? How will I use that coin in the upcoming days, weeks, months, and years to establish a life of my own? Being a senior in high school comes with challenges. The anticipation of every exciting last time, the last choir concert, the last football game, the last musical, and experiencing these last with the only group of friends I've ever known. Being a senior, experiencing the cancellations of these last times, graduating in the middle of a global pandemic has been the first big test of this next chapter of life. And yet, the novelty is not lost on me. This chapter will not be my last, nor is it my most trying. I have heard stories that echo in my mind every time I find a new challenge to rise above. These echoes help me find the strength to find my way through. The earliest story I can remember is of William Hellmouth. Miss Fraser told us it in 4th grade. He was such a, well, I'll let him tell it.
Why? Why? Someone must have put her up to this. Why must my excellent queen tell her people this? There's no way that my queen tells her people that she loves them like a regular person. I have devoted my life for her. I paid taxes to that woman. By relinquishing her duties but still staying queen, that's how she repays me? She doesn't love anyone else but me. Although I never met my queen before, I know she sees me in her heart. Ever since I was a teen, I was homeless. Yes, world, I was homeless. But I picked myself and worked harder than I ever have before. Every time I saw my queen walk the streets, I will look at her dress and my eyes will light up. I always thought my mother was a queen. But turns out she was just a big-mouth whore. She was just a woman who sold herself to random men on the streets. She left me at the orphanage where I later ran away because of Sister Mary. Sister Mary would always try to catch a peek of me while I was showering, but I would always catch her before she did. Anyways, every time I saw my queen walk the streets, I pictured her as a mother that I never had. A mother who would bathe me when I came home muddy from playing in the streets. A mother who would cook me my favorite dessert, figgy pudding. That was my favorite at the orphanage. My queen would be those things, only if I wasn't poor. Why must I be cursed with empty pockets? You know what? I've built my life. I've learned what to do and what not to do. I never needed her telling me to do this, and pay that. I never needed her anyways. I don't need a mom anymore. I'm an adult now.
I have built my life. I have learned what to do and what not to do. While William's beginning was hard, he was able to figure out how to do things on his own terms. But what if I'm not able to do things on my own terms? God, it sounds so whiny. Miss Smith always said, don't get stuck in the suck. But it's a lot easier to do when you can see a positive turnaround on the horizon. But I can't see it. I can't see or picture the happiness that awaits me on the next horizon, urging me forward, urging me towards something. Klaus is the same way. He didn't know what was coming next. His story sticks with me like most from the Holocaust. But what sets him apart is he can recall every detail, every memory, every breath.
My name is Klaus Keinswitz. My father, Otto Keinswitz, sold baked goods to the people of our neighborhood. We never really got much from the sales, but we got by. There was also my mother, Claudia Keinswitz. She was a wonderful woman. She was always cleaning up after me and my brother, or taking care of one of us whenever we got hurt. Yes, my brother. Gunther was older than me by 2 years, and he was one of the best parts of my life. I remember the kids at school, they would never let me into the little groups or let me play their games. I didn't really understand why. I had never done anything to them, but they hated me anyway. Remember that day when I got home, my father had painted a large yellow star in the window of our bakery. I didn't understand why. I asked him why, and he just told me it was unimportant. He lied. 3 weeks later, large monsters in soldiers' uniforms came, and they took my father. Took him away from me, away from my mother, and away from my brother. Sometimes when I try to go to sleep, I can still hear him screaming. Next day, me and Gunther did not want to go to school. We had no money, we had no friends, but we went anyway. I remember Gunther would always be ahead of me, calling me Slow Klaus. Every day he'd do that. Until he didn't. That day, I went home alone. When I got there, I found my mother crying. She told me they took your brother. They took him just like your father. It killed me to see her cry, but it killed me even more to know that my brother was gone. The soldiers, after what seemed like hours, they came back, took my mother. They took me. They took us to a camp. My mother was not there. My brother was not there. My father... The guards, whenever they thought we weren't listening, would talk about a man named Otto. They'd mock him for running. They would mock him for getting shot. They would mock him for dying. Remember, every couple of days, this giant black column of smoke would drift into the air on the horizon. And accompanying it would be this horrid, horrid smell. I didn't know it at the time, and I still wish I didn't. That smell was my family being burnt alive. I was 8 then, and now 7 years later, they moved us around a lot in the last year. Remember, the younger boys, whenever they fell, they'd be left in the snow, still cuffed, or they'd be shot. Usually the latter. When we got saved, I was almost dead. My vision was blurred with weariness. I could barely stand. Gunfire almost deafened me as the monsters who were escorting us collapsed. One soldier, an American, I later learned, he took me back to his camp. He gave me food, gave me water. But in spite of his unending kindness, in spite of everything they did for me, they could not give me back my family. They could not give me back my mother. They could not give me back my brother. They could not give me back my father. They're dead. They're gone. I didn't get to say goodbye. Their ashes were whisked away, but I'm still here.
The kids at school always treated me differently, never letting me into their groups. The loneliness of his life and experiences gave me the gift of perspective. I've been fortunate enough to never have to go through all my challenges alone. I've had the gift of one of the best inspirations in my life. My grandmother is my biggest companion, role model, and friend. She's seen so much, and her influence lives on through my mom. I was just talking to her this morning. Boy, was she on a tear about watching the last news report.
For a long time, I was afraid to speak out. I had my children, my husband, my job to think about. Oh, sure. I always made sure people knew just where I stood in politics. I signed petitions and I shared Facebook posts like that did anything. But it's 2020 now, and I am 78. It is far past time for me to say something. I should have said something years ago. Voltairine de Cleyre said many things, and I do not agree with it all, but she was brilliant. She said in On Liberty, "Speak, speak, speak, and know that when anyone's liberty to speak is denied, your liberty is denied as well, and your place is where the attack is." And I could not agree more. I have unintentionally been at the side of those who attacked the oppressed because I was afraid. Honestly, I am still afraid. I can no longer stand idly by. Last night, I saw another horrible news report about the protests, and something that's been building inside of me since I was a child just snapped. I love this country, and I refuse for it to fall like this. I refuse for this country to continue to be a place where people have to beg for their lives, for the right to breathe from the people who are supposed to protect them. and for those protectors to respond with violence. Don't tell me the protesters took it too far. Don't tell me there are good cops. I don't want to hear it. No one should be killed for the color of their skin, and no one should respond to constructive criticism with tear gas and rubber bullets. Honestly, would anyone think J.K. Rowling were in the right for shooting someone who called her out for her trans-exclusionary radical feminism? I refuse for this country to treat its citizens like trash for who they love. People of the same sex being together ain't natural, they say. Nothing is natural anymore. I'm 78, and I understand that. Improvements are made to society every day. Shouldn't someone being with who they love instead of forcing themselves to marry someone just because of societal pressure be treated like one of those improvements? I guess not, because instead they are belittled, hated, and beaten down. And I refuse for this country to act like its citizens who do not conform strictly to cisgender female, cisgender male lines are not real, or that they are somehow confused. They are real. That is their life, their gender, and there is nothing wrong with it. I refuse to live in a country that cannot get it through its thick skull that women have value. None of the hundreds of achievements women have made can clue it into that. And I especially refuse to live in a country that forces its children into concentration camps, where the conditions are horrible and where children go missing constantly. And not only that, but they sterilize women without their consent for no good reason. It isn't even the first time that it's happened. I should have said something years ago when I found out that my friend had gone in for an operation. So excited to get such treatment from an esteemed hospital, only to come out unable to have children because she was Native American. At the end of her speech, Voltairine says, "There will come a dawn, sharp and white, and liberty will be awake then. It is at such moments that declarations of freedom are made." That speech was made over 100 years ago in 1909. This is that moment. This is when liberty is to awaken. Liberty calls for action, to vote, to protest, to make sure these horrible deeds cease, so that we can all fix this beautiful country we want to love. There is good here. I've seen it, and I know you've seen it, whether it be in the kindness of a stranger, or the beautiful things this country creates, or even just looking out in the window into the wilderness. But all this muck and filth has hidden it away from us. It's not too late, though. We can still wash it all away and see the beauty underneath. If you would only listen when liberty calls.
I've been afraid to speak out at times, to speak out about how we as kids have such a vision for our future and so little guidance on how to make it happen. How do we use lessons from our past to tailor them to fix our future? Oh my God, that reminds me of a story Max was telling me, of Alexio of the future, who took lessons from Alexander the Great and used them to rally those around him.
My men, women, and whatever else you decide to call yourselves, today marks an important occasion in history. On this day, the 13th of April, 2037, we will make our final move in reclaiming Alexander's empire. We've moved far and wide to get here, from Macedonia through Asia Minor, south through Palestine and Egypt, and east through Syria and the ancient lands of Babylonia.
And now, we will make our final leg of this journey, the push through the Indus River Valley. Some of you have been with me throughout this entire journey. Others have joined through enlistment, recruitment, or pledging your allegiance. However, right now, all of you stand the same. Alexandrians. We pulled Greece out of debt. We solved the human rights crisis of Turkey. We pushed Helboza out of Lebanon. We tried the corrupt war criminals of Israel and allowed many Palestinians to return to their homes in Palestine. We solved poverty and homelessness in Egypt. We overthrew the insane government of al-Assad in Syria. We destroyed ISIS in Iraq. We ended the Iraqi-Iranian tensions in Iran. We pulled the Taliban out of Afghanistan. And now, we will reunite the Indian subcontinent once again, levying the century-long divide placed there by the British. I must address my men, as Leonidas and Alexander did before me. With this final leg of our journey, it is evident that many of you will not wish to join me. I'm sure many of you have seen the atrocities of war firsthand, and others have heard countless tales from their comrades. With that, I'm sure many of you would rather return to the safety of your homes, safety provided to you by the very people you see surrounding you. With that said, I will give you this final dare. Depart! Go back to your homelands. I will not hold any of this against you. However, to those who stay, to those who have the courage to stand up and fight for what we believe in, your names will be those that go down in history as the ones who completed the Neo-Alexandrian Empire once and for all. I see. So none of you are cowards after all. Today marks a momentous event in history. Alexandrians stay steadfast. Aviva te santon the tale. As I look at my men, I can't help but feel a great sense of pride in my heart. However, I also feel a great sense of dread. The Indians, Pakistanis, Banglas are all very strong, very nationalistic. This will be the hardest fight we've ever fought, but we must, but I must prevail. I'm sure many of these people will die. My death is a great possibility as well. Oh, Alexander, I hope you can continue to lead on after my death. If I die on the battlefield, like Leonidas and many others before me, At least I know that it will not be with cowards.
Rallying the will to move forward is hard. As he said, this is the most difficult fight we have fought, but we must. What is it with the guilt of apathy? Like, I get these problems seem insignificant, but I also know that I'm pissed. We all are. The crushing weight of my senior year has left me feeling like I'm stuck on the caboose of a train. Like I can see all the bad things moving behind me, but I can't see any good up ahead. Which leaves me thinking that there'll only be more bad. And the train has taken so many twists and turns that I don't even know what's going on anymore. Amanda. My mom told me the story about this woman at my church one day when I was pissed. And despite me being more pissed, I remember being humbled. Amanda's story really does highlight just how cyclical these moments in our country can be.
What they talk about, it's all a lie. They don't understand what really happened. These stories they tell are all happy ones. They praise the ones who promised so much, but didn't stick to it. They're rewarding the people who ruined so many lives and caused the deaths of many more, whether they knew it or not. When they publicly put these people on the air, it corrupts the vision people have of this terrible time. These monsters want to make it seem like they had everything under control in the first place, which they obviously did not. You don't have things figured out when the nation you run goes into poverty for over 10 years. You don't have total control over the situation when over 7 million people die of starvation. Stop acting like you had everything under control in the beginning, because everyone that has lived through this time knows you didn't. Oh, by the way, my name is Amanda Dalton. I'm 39 years old and I live in Savannah, Georgia. The year is 1939, and what we think is World War II has just started. I used to have a husband and 2 kids, but now I only have my mom with me. Me and my mom made it through the Great Depression, which is more than I can say for the rest of my family. Living in Georgia is hard for us in these times, because no one really pays attention to our part of the country. And to make matters worse, in 1925 we went through an agricultural drought. Our roots were all dried up and our soil was the opposite of fertile. Therefore, when this old Great Depression came along, we were already in bad shape. With that being said, we tried our hardest to make it through, but in this story, I'll be talking about the ones who didn't. First off, my husband Nathan Dalton. Born in 1898, he was a real stocky man. He grew up a farmer's boy and he wanted to carry on that tradition. So when me and him met and he saw the opportunity, he took it. We had 2 kids together, Catherine and Adam Dalton. We raised our children together all our lives, until that day in 1925. When that day came, he ran in and told me all about how our crops weren't growing anymore. And to be honest, I didn't believe him. I mean, Nathan had won the best farmer award in our county his whole life, and yes, that's a real thing. So this was unreal. After that day, he changed. He wasn't the same man I once knew. First, we lost our farm, then our house, then our only source of transportation. We were homeless and living out of only what we had on our backs. Nathan went pretty quick. He always gave his food portions to Catherine and Adam, and he never left any for himself. On December 19th, 1932, Nathan passed away in his sleep from starvation and frostbite. Now on to my 2 kids, Catherine and Adam. Catherine was 12 and Adam was 10. They both developed symptoms around the same time. I found them with a fever and a terrible cough. And at that point, I knew it wasn't long. On September 21st, 1936, I found Catherine had passed away while unconscious. And then, only a day later, Adam was asleep with no sign of a heartbeat at all. You know, losing a husband and 2 kids takes a toll on you. especially when you believe in the president so much. In his speech on October 18th, 1931, he said that he would help 700,000 people, but I guess he only meant the millionaires in Washington, D.C. that didn't get to buy their fourth house this year, or the people that made only 50,000 instead of 100. The only family Hoover was helping was his own, and little did he know how much devastation that would cause for so many. It wasn't until President Franklin D. Roosevelt came that things started to look up. You know, he helped so much, but he couldn't fix it all. That's why the rest of my family passed on. But it wasn't Roosevelt's fault. No. It was Hoover's past actions that continued to hurt us. You know, the Great Depression didn't actually end until World War II started. This all makes me wonder, what will happen in the future? Will this happen again? Will America go back into poverty once more? There is no way that there could be as many people unemployed as there is now, right? I don't know. It all takes time, but hopefully in the future we'll know when to act on things to prevent things like this happening. And we can only pray that there won't be another president like Hoover. But who knows anyways? I mean, in 2020 we'll probably have flying cars and time machines, so I don't think there's anything to worry about, right?
It's like discussing politics at home. Stop saying you had everything in control in the beginning, because everyone who's lived through this knows you did not. Cyclical things and cyclical times. Jesus, cyclical thinking. I am stuck in my own self-pity. It's like my favorite character from a play. Miss Smith showed us this play about this girl moving forward, that she wanted something so bad, she forged ahead.
Oh my Lord, it's hotter than a blistering bug in a pepper patch today. Mama's in the kitchen right now cooking up some of her famous fried chicken for 4th of July supper. Her fried chicken is one of my favorites, but what I'm more ready for is her double chocolate gooey brownies. Ugh. My mouth is watering and my stomach is growling just thinking about it. As Preacher Thomas says, that mess is just sinful. And he's right. Mom won't let me in the kitchen until supper's ready. So, earlier me and the gang decided to sneak off down to Yankee Stadium to listen in on old Lou Gehrig's baseball speech. Ever since I was a youngin', I wanted to play baseball just like the boys. I dressed, acted, and even ate like a boy. Mom always tells me I act more like a young lady, but I'm just too gosh darn stubborn to ever listen. The other girls try to invite me to play with them and even join Girl Scouts. Yeah, but I ain't into any of that. My mama stays home, cleans house, cooks supper, just like all my other friends' mamas do. Well, except for Betty's mom. Her mom's a teacher. Betty's one of my bestest friends. I mean, she's the only girl that's accepted me for my boyish self. She's not like me, though. She's into dolls and dresses, while I'm into baseball and dirt. My older brother John always gets out in the backyard with me and plays catch. He always tells me that if I were a boy, I'd already be playing with the Yankees myself, even though I'm only 12 years old. But I mean, ever since I could pick up a baseball, I knew that's what I was meant to do. Lou Gehrig is one of my biggest heroes. He has heart, good sportsmanship, and he's a great teammate. I look up to him. Every night when I get down on my knees to pray, I always ask if someday girls could play baseball and that I could be a great first baseman like Lou. Man, he was just as quick as a bullet running them bases. Lou had some of the best sportsmanship I've ever seen walk out on that there Yankee field. He always shook the other team's hands and treated them with respect so that they'd respect him too. One thing that Lou taught me is Good sportsmanship's one of the best things to have as a player. So, when I'm playing with my friends, I always pick them up when they're down and treat them with respect too, even if I don't like them or if we're losing. When Lou's speech was all said and done, everybody was clapping and sobbing, and they all started heading home, so we decided to start heading home ourselves. I took Lou's speech straight to heart. Baseball is my passion, my purpose. I'm not going to let anybody change that. I'm going to play baseball someday. I'm going to carry on his legacy. As we headed home, we had Lou in our hearts and a speech permanent in our minds.
I also know what I'm meant to do. I'm not stuck on the caboose of a train. I'm in the driver's seat. I say where this train goes from here. And just like every ride in life, looking back can teach you so much. But you must move forward with the knowledge of how those bumps shape you. These influences in my life not only fill me full of confidence, but full of hope to finish this trek. These voices that echo in my mind are my roadmap forward.